Welcome to the Breakdown, everybody. This is Aaron Barker, broadcasting from an undisclosed location deep behind enemy lines, asking the questions that get you kicked out of Bible study and sent to therapy. Thank you all so very much for the opportunity to be in your vehicle, office, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, henhouse, outhouse, or doghouse, wherever it is you may be listening to the program today. Very excited about the opportunity to be in your radios. If you're listening to this right now on Odyssey Radio, very much appreciated. You can check that out on iHeartRadio, odysseyradio.com, O-D-Y-S-Y radio.com. Also, if you're not listening to this on the new app yet, you still have time to be cool like all the other cool kids. Simply go to your Google Play or Apple Store, and you can download the app, get all the podcasts of the show, listen to the stream as well, because you never know when we're going to get shut down for talking about the truth. So make sure you have that app there. Listen to all the fantastic radio shows, especially Abnormal Realities, which comes on after this show this evening. BreakDRadio.com is the website. You can get all the past and current shows over there, the weekend show, the Friday, Freaky Friday shows, which we're doing here. And also you can get the daily breakdown and check me out on all the socials at BreakDRadio.com is where you can go for all of those. Now, this is the day. This is you've made it through the week. You've probably got your Hawaiian shirt on like I do, but you've made it through the week. You've had a stressful time at work. You've had those coworkers that really just drive you a little bonkers, and you've heard all you can. You've taken all you could take when it comes to politics and when it comes to the COVID-19, when it comes to all this crazy stuff that's happening in the world. Every now and then, it's good to just sit back, relax, chill, and have an opportunity to let your mind explore just a little bit more than what it typically has throughout the week, which is what we're doing here on Freaky Friday. This is when we explore all the crazy, the odd, the paranormal, the macabre, the cryptozoological, the space, the aliens, all of that stuff. This is when we discuss all of those topics, and we get into alternative health and different variations of history, conspiracy theories, etc., just to let our mind wander and to get away from those things. Tonight's guest, however, is going to help us to be more grounded, to think more authentically, and to help us to wade through the situations we currently face in our lives. Now, if you've ever met somebody in your life that you're like, you know what, I just have an immediate rapport with them, I click with them, there's just something about that person. I don't know. Typically, I wouldn't like that person, but for some reason, I'm really drawn to them. Or you have those folks that just repulse you. It's not a look thing, it's not because they're, ugly. It's just you just don't want to be around them. Something about that person just doesn't mesh that well with you. Our guest tonight is going to talk about that when we discuss a little bit about soul tribes and what those are. As a two-time best-selling author, authenticity life coach, and soul tribe teacher and guide, Rainey Highley helps free her clients from the mundane, repetitive living so that they can experience a life of greater meaning. Rainey's clients remember that they came here with a purpose and then they live it. Rainey's own journey to authenticity began over 25 years ago after graduating from one of the nation's top law schools and embarking on a career as a law firm attorney. With a growing sense of dissatisfaction and happiness and a gut feeling that something wasn't right, Rainey left the practice of law to discover her authentic calling. This journey led Rainey to travel around the world to publish 7 books on spiritual topics that she loved, including her award-winning book inspired by the late Dr. Masaru Emoto, The Water Code, Unlocking the Truth Within. And during this time, Rainey returned to school to earn a second bachelor's degree as well as a master's degree, both in metaphysics. After years of following rules, people-pleasing, and trying to make herself fit in, Rainey found the courage to leave the corporate world behind and to step fully and completely onto her authentic path. This leap of faith opened the floodgates to such an overwhelming sense of joy, freedom, relief, and euphoria that Rainey decided to dedicate her life to helping others through life coaching and soul tribe teaching and guidance. You can find more out about her by going to breakdradio.com and getting her information through the show notes, but you can also go to the website, the number 4authenticity.com, 4authenticity.com. Rainey, thank you so very much for joining the program tonight. We're so grateful that you took an opportunity to be with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Aaron. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So you were an attorney. What was the law that you practiced?
Well, I was a civil litigation attorney. So I worked at a law firm doing pretty boring work, all things, considered. But we represented school districts, our firm in Boulder. And kind of, the one interesting thing on a little bit of a sad note that happened was we were representing Columbine when that whole thing
Ooh.
happened. Yeah, back in the day. So anyway, it was interesting. Yes, and it was a very long year that I practiced for.
Wow. So what was it, your first year and your only year, and you were representing Columbine, you're saying?
Not me myself, but our firm was.
Oh.
Yeah, our firm. I was doing very low level work. I was going and researching briefs and things like that. But it was enough to know that I did it, I tried it, and I was checking all of the boxes in my life on doing the right thing, and I was very unhappy. And so that was kind of where I had that, breakdown moment.
So what was it? Was there a drive for you to go into law school? Like this was a passion for you before you went, or was this kind of one of those things where you're just trying to find a stable, secure job? I
No,
mean,
I was very passionate about, I wanted to change the world. And, I thought I guess I was watching Ally McBeal at the time, and I was like, I'm going to go to law school and make a difference. And it was great that I went, but it was, very soon after starting my first year, I was like, oh, wait, this is not the way I'm going to change the world. And so now I had to figure out, am I going to finish law school? Am I going to complete this? And I did, but yeah, it wasn't what I had thought it was going to be.
wow. Yeah. I know so many people, I think they get that idea, that kind of idealistic vision of what their future is going to be like. And they end up in a job and they're like, this is the way it's going to be. And then they find out it's just bogged down with a lot of paperwork and a lot of people that just treat you bad. Not really a way to advance beyond what you want to make the change that you thought you were going to be able to make.
Well, and it's, something we spend so much of our day doing. You think about that needs to be something you at least can bear or tolerate.
Yeah.
Ideally, it would be something you love, but you don't want it to be something that you dread.
Yeah, that's but maybe you can find a middle ground there. Is so with that, because that's one of the things that I thought was so intriguing about some of the things that you do. So tell us about your journey. So here you are in a job, you were there, you're working it. It's not your idealistic job you thought it was. What was the transition point for you? Where was it like, okay, this is it for me. I've got to get out of here and go elsewhere.
I had a real kind of I guess a point of crisis where I was just so unhappy that my family sent me to my uncle, who is a family physician in Alabama. And they sent me down there and he sent me through like every possible test you could take, like every test you could think of. And there were no physical problems with me, but I was just like deeply unhappy. And so they sent me to a psychologist or psychiatrist or something. And her assessment was, you're in the wrong profession. And so that for me was kind of a point where I had an awakening and said, okay, here's a professional who said, according to my personality type, this is like the last profession I should be in. So that was a real helpful bit of information. I was like glad to get that. I wish I could have had that earlier, but that helped me because then I was able to focus more on, one-on-one kind of people-oriented things that really I was passionate about, and less so on researching things in the library.
So you're a life coach or an authenticity coach.
Yeah.
So what was it that they told you you're in the wrong profession? You need to find something different. What was it that you were like, okay, well, I think I'm going to be a life coach? Was it an automatic switch for you? Did you know exactly what you wanted to do, or was it a slow process, kind of, failing and trying and failing, or how did you arrive to this point?
I wish I could just say it was overnight and I just did it. That'd be great. But it's been a real lifelong process. A lot of stepping forward, stepping back, failing, getting back up again, but ultimately knowing that I wanted to help people. And that general idea was like, okay, if I'm helping people directly, then I know that I will be able to, be fulfilled as in my life and not wake up and feel so bad every morning. And so that was really kind of the focus that that intuitive drive led me to ultimately do life coaching. But it took several steps before I got to life coaching, where I was doing law related stuff. And so I eventually found my way to this in 2017 and
Oh,
have
wow.
loved it, loved it, loved it.
So it took you a while to finally get to that point.
It did. Yeah, I was just thinking about, I graduated from law school 25 years ago. It's so weird to think that. But yeah, I practiced for a year and then did a bunch of law related type of stuff until I finally found my way to my passion.
Well, that's actually that makes somebody like me feel pretty good, because I look at that and you see these life coaches and these that you wonder, what have they gone through to get to the point where they actually have the expertise to help somebody else out through their situation. So when you hear somebody, so you 25 years it took you to finally get to this point, that testimony in itself has got to instill some hope into some people that there's still time. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna expire where I am. I still have time to get where I want to go.
There's always time. And I think that's such a good point, Aaron, because it's like, you know, I always say to people, if you are on your deathbed and you're looking back at your life, are you going to say, okay, I'm proud of what I did? Or are you going to say, it really wasn't meaningful to me? And you don't want to, like, there was a girl in my law firm who said, what is it going to matter if I'm the best civil litigator in the world, when I die? Like, it's not going to matter to her. And so that is a real, like, important thing, I think, for people to think about is like, am I doing something in my life where that is going to matter when I'm on my deathbed? Because if you're not, stop immediately and do it. And yes, it took me 25 years to get to this point, but you think, I had really nobody to guide me. I was kind of out there on my own. I mean, there are people who can help you move through the process faster than that, but it is not an overnight thing. It's scary. It's so scary jumping and taking that leap of faith, especially when there's not other people doing it. You feel like you're all alone. So yeah, I think that's totally normal.
Yeah. And I think also, because there are a lot of people now that with the introduction of social media and all of the 24/7 news cycle, I feel like I say that every time I'm on the air. But with the internet, the way it is, if you think of something that you want to do, odds are somebody's already thought about it. So now you have to find a way to make that special. So what's your advice for somebody like that? Like, like right now we're in radio, we're on, talking on the radio here. What is your advice to somebody who could be in a crowded market of something that's so difficult for them to break through on? How do you encourage that person to keep going, or how do you give them inspiration for ideas to kind of battle that fear or that concern? I'm asking for a friend.
It's really a great question. It's such a good question. And it really hits at home for me, because when I had my awakening, that was the first thing I noticed, was like everything seemed recycled. And I'm like, where is the new information? How are people adding real value to our planet and
Right.
not just talking about everything that they've heard? And so one thing that I would say is, taking the time to really get quiet before you do whatever you do, and really being in that receptive mode, because that's how the new ideas come through. For me, it's writing. For me, I get into the flow of, I'll just start writing anything, how I feel, what the day is like. And then I get into a flow that I know is my higher self. And that's where I feel like I get an edge. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm bringing information in that's new to us. And so that would be my advice, is really get comfortable with that place of receiving and knowing that you have the capability of accessing things that haven't been brought here. And that may even be your sole purpose on this planet,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's great advice, because it seems like silence is so, I mean, I've heard the saying silence is golden. but it seems so much that silence is so important. We went out of town, my wife and I did last year, and she had some conferences to go to. And I just had a time where I could just go and sit and be by myself. And I literally, for like 6 hours one day, I sat at a cigar shop and I had a cigar and I stared at the wall. And that's all I did. And I thought about my marriage. I thought about my kids. I thought about my faith. I thought about my radio show. I just thought, and I just sat, and nobody bothered me, which I thought was fantastic and very weird. But it was just like, just to sit there and kind of disappear away from the world and just drown everything else out and just get in a moment of thinking and concentrating. So you mentioned there your higher self. So when you get to that area, that higher consciousness, are these ideas something that you're getting from yourself, or are these ideas you're getting from external sources? Where do you get this inspiration from?
Well, I mean, I guess I try not to put too many characteristics on it as of whether it's myself or, someone else. You know what I mean? I really
Yeah.
try to, because I know that's my limited perception, trying to identify it.
Okay.
And so I really try to connect with the energy of it. So, you know what I mean? Like really feeling the energy of it. And is this energy true to me? Does it resonate with me? Is it clear? And when it's that, I know that it's something useful for me. If I feel any sort of disharmony or confusion, then I know that wherever it's from, it's not something that I'm interested in. So that's really how I keep it. And I stay away from trying to identify it, because who knows if my conscious mind is right or not. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I do. So let's do this. I switch gears a little bit because it sounds, we could probably talk about that stuff for hours. I'm sure you can, because that's what you do. But we're talking to Rainey Highley here. And I would like to talk a little bit to you about your idea of soul tribes. What are soul tribes? I see you smile. You got a big smile on your face now talking about this.
Well, it just makes it so much fun for me. So thank you for asking me these fun questions. Well, soul family is a concept that I came up with here. I've got my books. It's my most recent book, Soul Family. Okay.
Awesome.
So soul family is, it's like your big galactic, it's different than your earth family. It's the family that is there for you when you die, waiting for you with open arms. It's the family that you're connected to on a soul level. So, when you meet people and you have that instant connection and you're like, I just know them. I feel like I've known them forever. Most likely they're soul family. And so to answer your question about that, I have identified 9 tribes of the soul family. And that's kind of what this book is about, is how I've met these different people from these 9 tribes and what kind of characteristics they have. And it's just kind of interesting because each of the tribes has a different soul mission on the planet. So, some of them are here, like light workers are here to ground and hold light on the planet. And then you've got like galactic shamans, and then light warriors. And light warriors are the people who don't fit into any of the like love and light stuff that you think. They probably are out eating meat and hunting and doing all these things. And you know what I mean? They're not like your typical whatever you think of. So it was just a fun experience to get to know these different tribes. And I felt like it was so helpful for other people, because it's a great way to really kind of connect with people and understand why you have that common feeling sometimes when you meet someone, and then sometimes you don't feel connected to someone at all. And I feel like it kind of explains that for people.
So where did this concept come from? Where did you initially get the information for this?
Well, so what happened is, and this is, I had a dog named Petunia, okay? And Petunia she was a little white Pomeranian, and she was basically my daughter because I haven't had children. So she lived to be 14 and a half years old.
Wow.
And she was literally like, when I think about her, I think like she was truly like one of my angels who came into form, like just somebody that I love with all my heart, probably like your children you feel for. And so when she left, when it was her time, it was so hard for me, but I knew enough about communicating with others on the other side that I set up like an area that you could call an altar, an area of focus that had like a picture of her and her hair and her, just different things of hers and, energy things for me, like my favorite crystal and a candle and stuff. And I just made the intention really clear that I wanted to communicate with her. And when I laid down in bed, I had a notebook next to me and a pen. And I had this experience, Aaron, that's like, it's so crazy to explain. I've always been able to be kind of like clairsentient, where I just kind of hear, I just kind of know things. But for the first time, I was clairvoyant. Like she showed me things physically. I mean, I saw this energy moving over me, and I go into detail about it in my book Soul Family. But basically what happened was I saw this family of beings, huge, like thousands above me, okay? Like all around me, working on my energetic fields, like trying to help with my sadness and trying, like it was this whole team of people that were helping me. And it was her message to me that I have really included in the book. You know what I mean? It was like she gave me that download, and I was able to share that with people through the book.
Wow. So you actually saw these, your soul tribe family, would you define that as heaven? Would you define that? What would you define that as, their location?
I would call it heaven. I would call it the afterlife, where we go when we die. And I just felt like, even though we can't see them with our physical eyes or touch them, they are energetically around us all the time. We have so much help and so much assistance. And just having that visual for that hour or so that she showed me this was just, it changed my life. And it gave me so much hope and such a feeling of like, okay, there's nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? Like we're so cared for, we're so taken care of. And all the things that seem really bad, they're just not as bad as they seem, because we really have help.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're talking to Rainey Highley. We're going to take a quick break here. When we get back, we're going to discuss this and more about soul tribes, and then I'm going to ask you a couple more questions about that, Rainey, because it's kind of a fascinating topic. I'd like to dig in a little bit more to this. So keep it locked in right here on the Breakdown Odyssey Radio on Freaky Friday. There's technically not a break here, but I got a break so I can pop it in there. So I'm going to do another intro. This is always awkward for me when I pre-record sometimes like this. So if you need a break or anything like that,
I can take a sip of my water.
Yeah, that's fine. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, you feeling okay so far? Everything going all right? Is there anything that you want to get into, or?
No, you're doing great.
Oh, well, so are you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, just lead the way.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm not going to take you off screen, and I'm not going to mute you because I don't want any of the technical issues. So I'm just going to come right back in here just a second. Okay. All right, welcome back to the Breakdown, everybody. Thank you all so much for staying with us during that break. Again, you can head on over to your Google Play or your App Store and download the Odyssey Radio app, ODYSY Radio. And you can listen to the programs that are on here, as well as all the podcasts and the live stream. And we're talking to Rainey Highley. Very excited about this conversation. The number 4 authenticity, 4authenticity.com. Rainey is a soul tribe teacher and guide, founder of the Soul Tribe Revolution. So the Soul Tribe Revolution. So you were talking before the break about how you saw these, your soul tribe that were actively engaged in working to help you out. And you said there was a massive amount of these folks. So at the same time, I'm sure that there are people here on earth that are a part of your soul tribe. So they're all working on your life and helping you as well as helping these others. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that's happening across the globe right now. And it's this call for reunion with our soul tribes. And so it's going to be more serendipitous kind of meetings with people that you feel that you have a connection with, where you're like, oh, And these people have been waiting for you. They may not consciously know it, but on a soul level, they've been waiting for you. They are people who are going to open doors in your business and introduce you to the right people. I mean, it's an important step in our evolution as humanity, is to connect with these soul tribe members, to have these serendipitous meetings, and to allow that kind of quickening of our evolution to happen.
When you said that, I know that I immediately thought about a scripture that's in the book of Hebrews that said that, I'm trying to find it here because I can almost quote it, but you know how you get some of those texts and then you can't remember all the words, but pretty much it's wherefore, here it is, Hebrews chapter 12, wherefore seeing about that we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us. And so I thought about that when you said that, this group of people that's up there. And I thought, we do have, and a lot of faiths have this, especially in Christians. We believe in an afterlife. We believe that there's a heaven, and the Catholic sect of Christianity believes that you can still pray to and have communion with the saints, because God is a God of the living, not a God of the dead. So they have this idea as well. So it's almost like this is a a continuation or an expansion almost of that same idea. So how important is it how important do you think it is for someone to find their soul tribe and reconnect with them?
Well, I think it's really important. I think it's, I don't want to say is essential, but it's pretty crucial to their evolution, because things are going to happen so much easier and faster, and it's just, things flow better when you've got your people around you. I mean, it's just kind of like, I know so many people who are keepers of the grid, and they're like the ones who are doing these crystal grids and going to energy centers around the globe and going to Peru and Machu Picchu and putting crystals there. And I mean, seeing them come together and work together that's something that I was able to witness, and it's so fulfilling. So I think it's really, really important. And I think it's also absolutely in line with Christianity and as you're saying, like that belief system, because these are our angels, these are our loved ones, that's who's helping us. And so it's a really easy concept to wrap your head around, I think, once you have someone who's passed and they're talking to you. If that
Yeah. So are you, this may sound like an elementary question, but when you're born to your parents, you have your parents, your brothers, your sisters, if you have siblings, is that are those people automatically your soul tribe? Are they part of that?
That's a good question. No, and they may not even be in your soul tribe at all. In a perfect world, we would all incarnate and have our soul tribe as our family, but that's not the way it works for some reason. So that's why I just make that distinction, that your earth family is not necessarily the same as your soul tribe. There's so many people out there who are like, I feel like an alien in my family. I feel like I'm the only one of whatever. And that's okay. That's not wrong. You know what I mean? It just means you've got to get out there and connect with people who are going to feel like your soul family.
So is it when you meet these folks in your soul tribe, what is it about them? What is it about that your connection with them? Is there anything we should look for when we do that? Or
okay, well, like I'll just give you an example. For me, like, I mean, in my life, I had met people in law who didn't really feel like my soul tribe. They were pretty serious and I was very lighthearted. And the first time that I met my tribe, or one of my tribes, which are the cosmic cetaceans, okay? These are people who love the water. They love swimming with whales and dolphins. I went on a dolphin swimming trip in Hawaii with these people I'd never met. And the only reason I went there is because they'd read my book, Divine Macroverse, and they're like, you're our family, you've got to come. And so I was like, okay, it's a sign, I'm going to go. And what I found, like, it makes me, I almost get teary eyed when I think about it, because when I went to Hawaii with them, I have this contrast of the very serious corporate world that I was in. And now I'm in this house with all of these, they were my soul tribe. They were laughing and giggling and, like rolling on the floor. They were laughing so hard. And I'm like, these are my people. Like it was, it was unlike any, I'm like, these are people that I just feel so myself with, and so connected to. And they like, I could tell them my real story without skipping anything. You know what I mean? Like I could get really real with them and they were totally accepting of me. And there was something magical about us coming together and what was created by us coming together. It was almost like we created a new timeline or something for ourselves. I mean, it was magical. So it feels like coming home, that's the feeling. It's a feeling of like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? This is the most at home I've ever felt.
So essentially your soul and your spirit like resonates with them and their mission and such.
Totally. Absolutely.
So how does this impact, like you mentioned a couple of jobs there, a couple of things. You mentioned grid keepers and then you mentioned your tribe. So before I ask this question, so what is your tribe's purpose? Like what's your goal, your soul mission here?
Sure. Okay. So each of these, the quiz that I've got that you can take online, it's a free quiz. It takes like 15 minutes. It will give you your top 2 tribes. Okay. So the reason is that I have found so far that I have 2 tribes. And so I assume everyone's got 2 tribes. It could be different. I'm open to that. But my 2 tribes are cosmic cetaceans and ambassadors of light. And cosmic cetaceans are here to hold the vibration of sacred water. That's, I'm sure, my passion for water and meeting Dr. Emoto and writing the water code and swimming with dolphins and whales and all of that. Then the other one, ambassadors of light, we hold the vibration of home. So when people oftentimes meet me, they're like, I don't know, I just feel like my soul, like it's some connection to home. And I'm like, that's my purpose. That's my purpose as, a member of this soul tribe, ambassadors of light, is to sound the vibration of home, to hold that frequency on the planet and say like, because it's like anything you see you can't trust, but that vibration of home that resonates with your soul is something you can trust. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like the goal, is to sound that vibration and allow it to call people home.
That's awesome stuff there. It's all. Now how does this affect your profession? Like you obviously, so you have a passion for water, which I'd love to get into here in a minute as well. But you're talking about the vibration of home. So how do you find a job? Like if you find your soul tribe, how does this impact your career, your profession? What are you, I guess we'll just leave it at that and let you kind of explore that if you wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that I'll say, Aaron, is like, everyone's soul mission doesn't mean you have to be employed in that. Okay. So there are people who have regular jobs who have their soul mission fulfilled in some way, right? That's not their mode of living. So for me, like, I love to teach yoga, teach hot yoga. For me, that sounds the vibration of home. Do you know what I mean? It's about reminding people, my job as a soul tribe teacher and guide, is about reminding people of who they really are. And that sounds so simple, but it's like, we have taken on as a society so many roles, and we have been indoctrinated through our parents and society and everything as we've grown up, through our schools, education, all of this. We've got all of these roles that we're living. We want to be a good wife or husband or whatever, we're good parent, good everything. And it's like, it's not until we really shed those roles that we're able to see the light that we are inside. And it's about really nurturing that light and and allowing it to grow so that we can recognize other members of our tribe with that light, um, I feel like that's really what it comes down to, is nurturing the authenticity inside of a person, but it takes a lot of shedding first.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've spent my life doing jobs that weren't really my passion. It was always just jobs to make sure I could take care of my family, jobs to make sure that my wife could be a stay-at-home mother and homeschool the kids, jobs that always focused on the bottom line. So and I have done myriad jobs over the past 22 years of marriage. So one of the things I've always, and this has been kind of a developing thing for me, is that, like what you just said a moment ago, you have a mission in life, whatever your mission in life is, whatever your sole purpose is, to exist here on earth. Even if your job may not be that, for instance, if somebody is a preacher, or they, a public speaker, something like that, just because their job is maybe in accounting, or their job is in customer service, or if it's in hospitality, or if it's in, a sanitation worker, they still have a purpose there. And that purpose, whatever their goal is, to spread the gospel of Christ, to spread the light of Christ, to spread, like you're saying, to sound that vibration of home. The people that are sanitation workers still need to have that vibration sounded around them. They still need to have that light that's brought to them. So it seems like a lot of folks look for that purpose, and they almost, and I did this too, they almost have to have that label from their career say the same thing that resonates with their purpose. Otherwise, they don't feel like they're fulfilling it.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying or not, but
it totally makes sense. And I think you're right. I think it is difficult for people to have a job that pays them well, that is their sole purpose. That's ideal, and wouldn't it be great? But the reality is that there are ways that you can fulfill your sole purpose that are outside of that. So let's say that you've got just a regular, ordinary job. For me, like, I love to take on at least 1 or 2 yoga classes that I teach a week, because that's a way for me to bring that light in. Do you know what I mean? Share
absolutely.
It with others. It's not a money-making thing. It's just something. So there's ways to fulfill that. Maybe it's working with animals, maybe it's doing something outside. There are ways to magnify your authentic self. And also, I think learning about your soul tribe helps, because it's like, okay, let's say that you're a galactic shaman, and you're here about holding the vibration of truth. That's really important to you, truth. That's some way. Knowing that information means, okay, maybe in my spare time, I'm going to go and do like a shaman workshop, or I'm going to, go on my own journey through the woods and meditate and see what comes to me. I mean, there are ways you can do that in your spare time. So it's not necessarily just your work, although that is the ideal, is, live your passion and live it, step out big into it and just say yes to it and hope that you can create it and manifest it. But there's that fear of, what if it doesn't work? And I've got my family relying on me, and I've got my mortgage and all of this. So it's a constant balance of like dealing with the reality of our earthly life and living this soul focused life that I think we all want to live.
yeah, it's almost like, and that's such great encouragement there. It's almost like we spend so much time trying to find that ideal position in life that we forget that, like you said, it could be in your spare time, and it might be in your spare time. It might be the only time. You look at folks that I know a friend of mine who works a full-time job, and then she goes out and does a homeless ministry where she actually helps. She gives homeless clean clothing, food, feeds them, and this is something that's ongoing. She doesn't make any money off this. She doesn't get any recognition off of this. She just pulls together a bunch of people who wants to do this and uses it. There are biblical counselors who go to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then take time every week to meet with couples that are troubled, or children that are cutting themselves, or something like that. They find that time. So for me, this is a very, very, very special program so far, because It's realizing that even though you might not be doing that 9 to 5, where it's everything you want to do, where you're just going to pour yourself into it, you can still be a light to those people around you. You can still fulfill your soul purpose and find time to do it. If it's really your passion, if it's really a desire that you want to do, you're going to find time to do it, and I think that's so important.
Well, and even, for the person out there who's, you mentioned like the sanitation worker, it's like, how can I, as that sanitation worker, bring more joy into my everyday? Like, am I singing while I'm working? Am I listening to music? It's like, how can you spread that light, even doing the mundane,
Right.
because everything that we do is somewhat part of the mundane. And so it's a practice throughout the entirety of our day. It's a practice that, we hopefully can take into our lives fully, but to just remember that on a moment by moment basis, that being in that vibration of joy,
Yeah.
being in that vibration, that's the most important thing that you can do. What brings me to that place of joy, and how can I do that right now in this moment?
That's beautiful. That is awesome. And my wife's favorite saying that she does all the time is choose joy.
Yes.
Choose joy, because you can find it anything. I did it. My topic. This is odd because my topic on one of my shows recently was this very thing, that you can find the good in everything if you look hard enough.
Yep.
And once you find that good, if you can find a virtue in someone and then praise them for that virtue, encourage them in that virtue, even if it's the smallest, most minute thing. They could be the biggest jerk that they could be completely self-centered, but every day they're at work on time and you can rely on them to be there to do their job. Just praise them for that. Find joy in that. Help them reach that. So that's fantastic stuff so far. I really appreciate this, Rainey.
And also just really remembering that you can learn something from everyone. Like, everybody's perspective is so valuable. Even, the homeless person, how did they get that way? What is life like for them? You know what I mean? Like, we can learn something from every single person, and never thinking that you know it all. It's like, what is this person here to teach me? What can I learn from them?
Awesome. That's a fantastic perspective. Again, you're listening to The Breakdown right here on Odyssey Radio. We are talking to Rainey Highley. Great conversation so far. I really appreciate this. Now, you mentioned something there about not only your soul purpose, but also a book that you had written that was inspired by Dr. Emoto's work on water. So tell us a little bit about that, because I would have loved to have been a marine biologist. I love water and I love being around it. It's just everything about it. I'm landlocked here in Kentucky.
I love Kentucky.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about your work on water and its importance.
Sure. I'll give you a visual. I have my books here. So here's the water code. So you know what it looks like. But yeah, this book was Dr. Emoto really inspired me to start thinking differently about water. And just kind of for people out there who may not be familiar with Dr. Emoto, he was a Japanese scientist who passed several years ago, but while he was alive, he did the most amazing research on water that I think has happened in our lifetime. And that is, he took distilled water and he froze it after subjecting it to a word like love or hate. And he noticed that the frozen crystals were beautiful when they had a beautiful word around them, and they didn't form crystals when they had a word like hate or ugly or kill next to them. So it was this whole proof kind of that your words and your thoughts actually have an impact on the world that we can't see. The quantum realms. The water was showing us that. And so anyway, that's, I could go on for forever, but that's kind of what Dr. Emoto did and why he inspired me.
So now, what did you take from that, and why was it such an impact for you, and for that? I mean, what was so special that you saw about that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's cool because you think, okay, I see snowflakes, and I know every snowflake is different. But when Dr. Emoto took these photos, and he had not just the word hate in English, but in Japanese, and then he had the word love, and then maybe he had a photograph of dolphins. Do you know what I mean? Like, so they were all these really different ways of coming at an energy, and the water responded to the energy of the word. He also used music, he also used prayer, and it responded by forming a crystal that was like, if they were praying something over the water, it was this beautiful harmonious crystal that like represented the energy of the prayer. And if they put the word divorce on the water, it would take a crystal and it almost looked like it was two things breaking up.
Wow.
So it's really fascinating, because water is almost like this interpreter. It's like almost like a universal interpreter of energy. And so I knew that that was the biggest breakthrough, because humans being over 70% water, and you think about when we're born, we're like 90% water. And then we die, we're down to like 65%. And you think like water really in so many ways represents the soul. When you
Wow.
think about it, it's just like, if you really think about it, you think about water as being the only substance on this planet, that natural substance that can transform from a solid to a liquid to a gas within the normal range of planetary temperatures. It's like, well, we talk about ascension, we talk about transformation. Is that possible for us as beings made up of water? So it really it almost hurts your mind to think about all of this stuff. It's like, wow, because I think we're just barely scratching the surface of water.
Well, go ahead, please.
Well, no, I just think it's definitely the next frontier of learning for us as a species.
So the entire thing of what you just said there is fascinating, but people hear that and like, oh, well, that's a great experiment in a laboratory somewhere, but what's the practical application of something like that? But when you said that our bodies are made up of 70% of water, there's synchronicity in this, by the way. I did an interview with someone a few weeks ago. I'd never heard of Dr. Emoto, never heard of the water study, and she brought this very thing up as well. That's why I heard something you had done recently, and I'm like, hey, that is so odd that she said the same thing. But when you said that about it being 70% that our bodies are 70% water. So these frequencies of words that we use, hate, anger, malice, whatever these words are, or whatever vibrations fuel these words, actually impact us physically on a cellular level. Not just, word sticks and stones may break my bones, but literally on a cellular level, these are causing vibrations or disturbances, or even, praise or health by speaking these words just in our presence.
Well, it's not just that, it's what we're watching, it's like what we're speaking, what other people are speaking, what the music is saying that's on around us. All of these things impact the water that we are. And not even just us. It's like not even me just saying a negative thought, but thinking a negative thought about myself impacts the water. So it really invites us to be really precise with our words and our thoughts, and really, making sure that we choose harmony with every thought and every word and every show that we watch. How can I choose something that's going to fill me up and make me this beautiful crystal formation, of water molecules, and not a broken up, sick kind of person,
right?
Physically sick,
So I've harped on television a lot because there's so much, growing up when my parents were protective of what we watched, especially what we listened to. And we are to a certain extent protective of what our children watch and listen to. But you mentioned there, so I've harped on TV a lot, but music is something that is everybody loves music. Music is a universal language. And there's so many variations, so many types of music. Are there good styles of music and negative styles of music? Are there the music that we should be listening to and music that we should just not let into our repertoire?
Well, I mean, from Dr. Emoto's research, he would say that you would want to listen to classical, more harmonious, peaceful type of music. He did Beethoven and Bach and Mozart on the water molecules, and they made these gorgeous crystals. And then he took heavy metal music and played it, and they were not pretty crystals. So, I don't want to say all heavy metal music's bad or anything like that, but I just think it's paying attention more to the energy behind the music. Is there a positive energy that created this music? Is that what this energy represents? And if it's not, you don't want to have that around you. You don't want to have that in your cells, because they're responding to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if because I am a heavy metal guy. I love listening to heavy metal, but there are times when it can incite emotions that you weren't in an angry mood, but now you're starting to find yourself a little bit more aggressive, a little more angry. But back in the 90s, I remember, I'm not sure when it started, but I do remember back in the 90s seeing all of these heavy metal groups. And one of the big things that they always did at these metal and rock concerts was the mosh pit. And there were guys would be in there just, beating the crap out of each other, slamming each other on the ground. I mean, the music was pumping, everybody was yelling and screaming, and they're just like, dancing and jumping and pounding each other around. And I'm like, why you don't see that happening at a Mozart concert or, at a symphonic concert or something like that. But it does incite a lot of those emotions.
It does. And I mean, I want to say that I hope somebody out there is going to take Dr. Emoto's research a little bit further and say, okay, what is it exactly about heavy metal that made it this way? Like what specific heavy, because I'm like you, I was an 80s rocker chick. Like I loved all that music. So I think there's something to be said for like a fun element or a joy element that you say, you know what I mean? Like if it brings you a lot of joy, I don't think it's bad. So I think that there's a combination of frequencies we should probably consider, and one of them is our own personal enjoyment of it, right?
Absolutely. So I guess like you're saying, so thoughts do when you think of words, do they produce the same frequencies as the words that you speak?
The answer, I believe, is yes. Maybe not to the same degree as the spoken word. Okay. But Dr. Emoto's research showed that thoughts and prayer absolutely affect the water molecules. Gotcha. Which is cool, because you think about how important it is not to sit there and say bad things to yourself, like, oh, stupid, or, don't say that. It's so important to always choose the higher vibrational word or thought when you think of it, when you remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so weird because this is coming up so often in shows that I'm doing lately. I just did a show, and actually I did a show Sunday that I'm regularly on. But the whole purpose of it was we were not going to do any prep. We were just going to do completely ad lib. So no prep. So I was just like drooling on myself, not thinking about anything, just going in completely blind. And the conversation centered around, or went to, not necessarily centered around, but one of the spokes of the conversation was this very thing here. The way in which we talk to one another, the way in which we talk to ourselves, the way that we act. I mean, you can be out there telling truth to people, but you could be saying it. And this actually probably goes back to what you were talking about with the music as well, expanding that research. You could be out there saying something that's true, but you could be saying it in such a way where it is so unattractive and so ugly that people don't want to hear it. You could be out there screaming about your soul tribe mission here and your information, and people be like, she's crazy, I don't want to. But then you can have a conversation like this, and people are being like, well, that makes complete sense. It's the delivery of it. And this political climate we're in, and I don't want to talk about politics, but the climate that we're in, it seems like it's not just politics anymore. It's sports, and which aren't bad. It's music, which again isn't bad. It's everything everybody has to take this firm, I'm planting my flag on this hill, I will die on this hill, that the 90s were the best era of rock ever. And somebody else will be like, no, it was the 80s. But it's like, but are we really going to fight over that? But people seem to be taking such extremes on their decisions, when it actually, when you boil it down, it really doesn't mean, it doesn't have that much meaning that we put behind it. Does that make sense?
Well, and it's like this division and is really like such a propaganda that's put in through the media to all of us. When I had the opportunity to travel around the world, to go to South Africa and Australia and near Tahiti and different places. And one thing that I've noticed is that people are loving and kind and warm. All of these places I met some of the most amazing people. And I thought, we really don't have the division that's fed to us all the time. Like naturally, innately, we are loving people. We get along. We want to help others. But there's so much propaganda put out for us they're like roles we take on. Like you're saying, put your flag in the sand. And it's like, you just accept these roles and adopt these roles that you're going to be one side or the other. When in reality, if there was no propaganda, we would probably all be getting along, having fun together.
Wow, the manipulation and the control of us, and it can be through any means. It's not just through the media. I mean, we know. I'm not sure what your thoughts on, but I've explored on the show the global elite, the desire to control people, and even when talking about frequency, looking into something like HARP, what the government does, where they shoot these very low frequencies into the atmosphere and use that as a way to, really manipulate and really harm people. But it could be anything. It could be NASCAR. When I first started watching NASCAR, I hope that doesn't change anybody's opinion on me. But when I first started watching NASCAR, I had somebody tell me like, "Well, you're not allowed to like Jeff Gordon. You're not allowed to like Jimmy Johnson. You're not allowed to like." And it was like you gave me a list of like 6 people I'm not allowed to like. So for the first 4 or 5 seasons I'm watching, I didn't like those people. But then I realized the more I watched, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with those guys. And that's kind of a very small part of it, but we're fed that the other side of our political beliefs are constantly evil, and all they want to do is hurt people, and they're destructive. But when you step back and look at it, I think each person, regardless of their political affiliation or religious affiliation, many times we start out with good intentions. We start out with a desire to really help somebody. Back in the day, my father-in-law, my in-laws family was part of a very legalistic church. Men weren't allowed to wear short sleeves. They weren't allowed to have mustaches. Women wore long skirts, had their hair up, and couldn't wear any kind of makeup. They initially started that desire to be separate from the world, to be different from everybody else, so that they could say, well, we're not partaking in the world. But then it became a legalistic thing where everybody had to do this. And if you didn't do it, you're not as good a Christian as I am. And you're not as good as Christian. You don't deserve to go to our church. And then it became something ugly. A desire for something good evolved into something ugly. And that happens so many times with politics and with religion and with conversations that we could be having. Oddly enough, having this show, calling it the tagline of the show, asking the questions that get you kicked out of Bible study and sent to therapy. I mean, if it wasn't true, the tagline wouldn't be here. So, but it's sad that we have to have those kind of taglines. I didn't mean to go off on that, but it just, there's so much that we could do if we did, like you were saying, and just, focused on the positive and tried to find the joy in everything that we do in life.
Well, and just, I had the opportunity to live in Australia for almost 2 years. And one thing I noticed about the media down there is there was so much propaganda about anti-American. I mean, there was this like view that was fed to Australians of America that wasn't true, but it made us look like we were always at war and always fighting in the streets with guns and things. And I thought, is this going on everywhere? You know what I mean? Like, is everyone getting fed something from somewhere that says everyone's different than you? You know what I mean? And the reality is they're all just like us. We have little bitty differences when you come down to it. And at the end of the day, we're all going to reconnect after we pass from this life. So, it's just, it's theater in so many ways, and it's really the heart and soul of humanity is what is pure, and it's what we have to remember.
Rainey Highley from For Authenticity, the number 4authenticity.com. If you have a few more minutes, you touched on the other thing. We've pretty much gotten everything that I was hoping we would get to. That one last comment you made there is like a perfect segue. So you just mentioned that we're all going to reconnect after this life. Let's talk about the afterlife. What are your thoughts on that? And what have you gained in your knowledge and research, and by way of knowledge for that?
Yeah. So, I'll just be real brief and tell you about my mom. She was, my mom's name was Lisa, and she was my best friend in the whole world. And she passed over in 2018. 5 years before she passed, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer, and we were told she didn't have long to live. And so, the beauty of having that short amount of time before she went is that we knew, okay, we knew mom's going to go, at some point she's passing over. And so we had the opportunity to sit down with my family around and say, okay, mom, you're going to pass. You know that I sit in that listening state and like to communicate. I'll be listening for you. So promise me the second that you die, and I had witnesses, I'm like, you have to promise me you were going to come back to me and tell me everything, like immediately. Don't wait and do a bunch of stuff. Like, no, you've got to come to me immediately. And so 2018, I was showering. We knew she was going to be gone at any moment. And I literally heard this voice and I'm not a clairvoyant, I don't hear, or clairaudient, sorry. And I heard this voice, and it was like, Rain, Rain. And my mom was the only one who ever called me Rain. And I knew it was her. And I just fell to my knees. I started crying. I could feel her spirit around me. It was so vivid and so real. I went and got a notebook and wrote 10 pages single hand, just like writing everything that she told me. And so I have this communication with her every day now since 2018. And so I'm currently writing a book with her, and it's called 8 Things to Know About Where We Go, Conversations with My Mom from the Afterlife. And so I've been asking her, what's it like? Tell me, what's the deal with this? Who's controlling the world? All of this stuff. And so it's been a really wonderful, reassuring thing for me, because it's not as bad as it feels sometimes. That's been the message. Like, everything is okay. And when you die, the first thing that you feel is this huge sense of relief, like wave of relief. Like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's perfect. And so, so anyway, that's kind of where my perspective on the afterlife comes from. And, from what she's told me, everything is very orderly. It's very harmonious. There's, things are run and organized. It seems like here, like, how is this crazy cabal running the world, and how is all this stuff going on? And it's not like that there. Like, things are great, and everything runs properly, and there's peace, and it's beautiful. So all of the problems that we're dealing with they are this earthly experience. They're what we're dealing with now, but it's not going to be like that when we die.
That's comforting. A lot of people, I'm sure, finding comfort in that they're not.
Yeah, I mean, just basic stuff. It's way better. And, my mom, and I'm sure other people who've lost loved ones, they want you to know that they're there with you. They're on your shoulder beside you. And if you ask for help, they can help you. So, that's been the biggest thing, is just to know that we have help, and to know that when we go to the other side, everything is fine. And then she would say, drop all of your fighting that you're having with friends and family, drop all of your disputes, and create peace and live as joyfully as possible.
So is that great advice? Great advice. Continuing there. So is there? Does she have any knowledge or insight into the future? What's going to happen, or who's, like everybody has these visions or these concerns about the Antichrist or this one world global government, et cetera. Does she have any insight onto that?
She says that she can't really predict stuff because it's all dependent on choices we make, which timeline we're going to go through. So she is not giving me any predictions, but she is saying that everything works out in an energetic sense of the 1,000 years of peace that it talks about in Revelation. Yeah. That's what we should be focusing on, because that's what's coming. And every time I go down the dark side and want to know about the juicy stuff, she's like, no, bring your thoughts back to positive stuff.
She's like, I don't work for the National Enquirer here.
Right.
So, well, that's been great. I really appreciate this. Give everybody an idea of where they go. First off, of the Soul Tribe test. You mentioned that. What is that, and where can somebody go to take that?
Sure. You go to findmysoultribe.com. And if you forget that, you can just go to my website for authenticity, number 4 authenticity.com. And you'll see a little section called quizzes. It's right there. You click on it. Quiz takes 15 minutes. And it's free. All you have to do is put in your email address, and you can take the quiz as many times as you want, and it will give you your results, and it will give you a description of that soul tribe, so you kind of know a little bit about it.
Awesome. Is there a way to connect with other folks in your soul tribe? Do you have that like a soul tribe social media yet? Soul Tribe Facebook?
I do. Yes. And please
cool.
Find me there. So I'm on Facebook, and I have Soul Tribe Revolution, which is a private group. You just have to go on and answer 3 questions, and then you automatically become a member. So please do connect with me that way. And we always like sharing images that remind us of home, and things that we want to share that maybe are too woo-woo for, the regular people in our lives. It's good to have that kind of soul connection that we can talk about those things without judgment and with support of others.
Fantastic. Rainey Highley, very, very grateful that you took the time to speak with us tonight. And we'll all try to connect with you there on your website. All this information as well will be available at breakdradio.com in the show notes and in the guest bios as well. Rainey, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to have you on again in the future if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you so much, Aaron.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's it for the program today. If you have any other concerns, again, breakdradio.com is the website. And until next time, make Christ supremely valuable.